Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Yes, it's July the 1st. Tottenham have made 4 signings. Team hasn't returned for pre-season yet. And there are still 2 full months of the transfer window. I don't know what's happening here. This isn't the Tottenham Hotspur we know. Something strange is happening. I think it might be to do with Antonio Conte and Fabio Paratici. Because this is strange times. Stranger Things is back today, and stranger things are happening at Tottenham Hotspur. Very, very strange. But hey, we're not complaining. It is great stuff. So, the arrival of Richarlison today. The latest in the line of Tottenham new arrivals. 25-year-old Brazil international, fee of around £60 million all in, including all of the potential add-ons. Contract until 2027, subject to a work permit. Shouldn't really be an issue, let's be honest. He's been a regular performer in the Premier League and also regular international for Brazil. It's crazy what's happening right now. So, medical had to be done in Brazil. He's away there on holiday after his international duty. Which is why you're not getting or haven't had an interview yet on the club website with him. I think all we've had so far in terms of words from him have been a little farewell to the Everton fans, which was very heartfelt, and a reply to Emerson Royal, who had a little chat with him about being excited about playing with him next season. And yes, of course, that brought the various replies on Twitter from those who don't expect to see Emerson Royal at Spurs next season. But we'll get on to that a little bit later. Where do we start? I suppose just what Richarlison and this transfer represents. That's probably the best place to start because there's so many elements to it. Look, you've heard me say before that Conte at times last season was looking at that bench and just essentially shaking his head, knowing that he just didn't have the options to change things. His squad depth kind of issues were well known. He made them clear, not only publicly, but privately as well to people. And this is no disrespect to the players on the bench. And a lot of the time there were young players on that bench, academy players who were having to fill in because only maybe 4, potentially 5 first-team players were out injured. So Conte is being heard. In those corridors of Hotspur Way, Antonio Conte's voice is being heard. They know that what he's saying it makes sense. This is a guy that has been at the very top clubs, around winning trophies. There's also Paratici, who has been at one of Europe's elite clubs for more than a decade. These guys know how to build a squad. That's what they do. And that's what you're now seeing as well. Don't forget Conte also built squads for Conte, or a squad, and obviously over a couple of years continued to form it, and they were title-winning squad, Serie A title-winning squad. So these aren't amateurs coming in to have a go. These are guys that know what they're doing. And I guess if you're Tottenham Hotspur and your success has been very limited, let's be honest, in recent decades, you listen. And that's the big thing. It is all about listening. And, Tottenham's profile has always been pretty much in recent years by young players who, there's a risk attached because of how they might not perform, but there's not too much risk in terms of their value drastically going down. And in most cases, they go up. It's the Tottenham transfer profile. We know it. We've seen it in operation. Buying kind of ready-made players has not always been the way. Richarlison, again, it's another example of, Conte actually quite clearly said it, that clubs need to buy important players, and he also meant ready-made players to hit the ground running. And I don't think it's any coincidence that 3 out of the 4 signings made so far have made more than 100 appearances each in the Premier League. And the other one, in even Perisic, he's played in every single league. He's played in Italy, he's played in Germany, he's played in Belgium. This guy knows how to adapt to different countries. He really does. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the ages of the players, we used to seeing 21, 22-year-olds, maybe 23-year-olds. These are the ages of the players in order of their arrival. 33, 34, 25, soon to be 26, and 25. It's a whole change in mentality. Even Perisic, he actually arrived. He came to Hotspur away today to start some indoors work because obviously had that. I think it was a calf injury at the end of last season with Inter. So he's come back a little bit early just to make sure that he is ready for pre-season. Who else came back? Skippy, Doherty, and Japhet Tanganga all came back. Sergio Reguilon also came back early as well, because all four of them had also had injuries at the end of last season, so they're all kind of just playing catch up essentially. So they're there early before the rest of the non-internationals come in on Monday, or from Monday certainly, and then the international players will be coming back just before that flight to Korea on July the 9th. So yeah, like I say, Perisic been everywhere, won titles galore, won trophies, knows the Conte way, has done it under him at Inter Milan. They won Serie A together. Fraser Forster, 133 Premier League appearances to his name, and obviously silverware at Celtic. I know some people will obviously do down the fact that it's in Scotland, but it's still winning. It's still having the mentality to see out seasons and winning things. It's still in there. Yves Bissouma, he's 26 next month. One of the best midfielders in the Premier League outside the traditional top six. He's played 112 times in the Premier League. Richarlison 173 times now in the Premier League as well. So these are tried and tested Premier League players, because the key for Conte, he doesn't want a bedding in period. He doesn't want an adaptation spell. We've spoken about how many players at Tottenham in the past have we spoken about that. You'll probably see the best of them maybe in their second year. That's it. Normally they say, I think Poch said this, foreign players maybe the kind of amount of time they often will give them is about 18 months to 2 years to really see the best of them. Conte hasn't got 18 months, 2 years. That's not how he works. He said, I want to win things. I want to be up there challenging. So I don't think it's any shock that all these players really should be expected to hit the ground running quite quickly. Obviously, they've got to adapt to a new club, new tactics, new philosophy, apart from Perisic. But ultimately, all of them should know the opposition they're up against and should know the way to play. And I think the other key thing that shows Conte is being listened to is Tottenham are spending money, and they're doing so quickly. Yes, the first two deals are free transfers, although I would always say with free transfers, people kind of write them off as like essentially I suppose the clues in the name, free, but of course they're not. They're signing on fees, the wages are bigger. There's loyalty bonuses in there as well. They're not nothing transfers. They do cost money. But obviously you can look at the latter two signings. Bissouma 30 million all in with the add-ons, which, yes, is a great deal for him. But obviously it's not an insignificant amount of money. It's still up there with some of Spurs' purchases over the years. But then Richarlison, bang, 60 million straight in there, which... I looked at the press release put out by Lyon when Ndombele signed, and technically with the add-ons, Ndombele is a little bit more than that. So he's not going to be... Richarlison isn't the record signing. But Spurs are going out there and spending money. They are... they really are. It's exactly what Conte wanted. And the fact that he also wanted the bulk of them to be in for pre-season... All four of the players should be there to go on the pre-season tour, and possibly one or two more heading off to Korea as well. I think, having that £150 million injected in gave Spurs and Paratici that little cushion to get some of these players in, rather than have to look for players going out first. I think that's been a big thing for them, because, they struggle to get players sold. I think we've seen that over the years. I think we're seeing it again at the moment as well. And that's always left us like a load of managers in the past frustrated that Spurs are waiting to the final weeks of the window because they need to make movement out of their squad and also rustle up some finances. I remember some days when Poch was very, very frustrated. But no, not now. Not now. This has been a very, very different summer. This is why, fourth player. It's just, I'm still trying to get my head around that. I'm so used to, at this point, talking about potentials And we're not. We're talking about 4 players through the door. And like I say, 2 full months left of the transfer window. So much more can happen as well. And I think another key thing that is very much a Conte thing of changing this mentality is you've heard me spoken about in recent videos about how Conte wanted to change the mentality from this set 11 idea to operate like a big club. The whole squad has to be of a similar quality so that he can pick whatever 11 he wants for any matches and that doesn't drop. And then during matches, he can bring on whatever player he wants. So for them to drop £60 million on a player who a lot of pundits are looking at this and saying, well, he doesn't start. Why are you spending £60 million on a player that doesn't start? It's exactly what Conte wants. It's exactly the point. He is now adding to the ranks of Son, Kane, Kulusevski, Lucas, and currently Bergwijn. He is adding more attacking quality there. He can play across the front 3. He can play on the left. He can play as a lone striker, which he did for much of last season when Calvert-Lewin was out, and a little bit after he came back as well. And he can also play on the right. So this is a guy that is going to give you so much more quality. Like I say, we all need to get out of this kind of backup way of looking at things. And I know I struggled. Even the last video kept saying backup to everything. And yeah, it's something we need to get away from. And Richarlison is a big example of that. Poor old Guesty. You might know Guesty. Rob Guest, who I do the podcast, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham with. A lot of people, by the way, they're always saying in the comments, can you make these into a podcast form? I can't. That's the whole reason we have Golden Guest Talk Tottenham. So I don't really want to put out anything to rival what we're already doing. So sorry about that. And people will continue to ask and I will continue to reply. We do Golden Guest Talk Tottenham. But Guesty, as you may well know, if you listen to that, it's on all major podcast platforms. He is an Everton fan. So it's been a difficult week for him with Richarlison, arguably their best player heading off. And it was really interesting. I was talking to him about that today. You can hear him talk about it in more depth on the podcast, which it was out there now. I asked kind of what we can expect, and he just said a player that will absolutely work his socks off for you. There's all this kind of perception maybe from the outside that he is, I don't know, like a troublemaker. He's got attitude and problems and things like that. And Guesty said, the realities couldn't be further from the truth. This is a guy that all of his teammates love him. He's incredibly popular in that dressing room. His managers love him. The only times you'll see a little bit of a tantrum from him mainly is when he has to come off because he doesn't want to come off. He just wants to stay on the pitch. I think even someone said there were tears once when he came off. So yeah, it's he's not that kind of player. He's got a nasty streak. There's a pantomime villain to him. And when I mean nasty streak, I mean kind of in a footballing sense, in almost like a good way, that competitive edge. Yes, he will moan at the referee. Yes, he will try to win free kicks. And yes, Christian Romero has had his run-ins with him. I think Davinson Sanchez got sent off once for stopping with an elbow against Watford. Seems to ring a bell as well. But, Guesty said, he will bring that. He will bring that element to the game. And he has got a lot of talent. And I think what a lot of people are saying that know Richarlison is that you kind of almost, you ain't seen nothing yet, I guess is the expression, because you've seen him be maybe a bigger fish in a smaller pond, and he hasn't had the challenge of, Champions League football and things like that, and the higher level players around him. And there's a real thought that, he's only going to kick on even further. And look, let's be honest, is there any player that Conte hasn't improved thus far in the last, since November he came in? I think we can safely say that pretty much every player he's worked with has improved in certain facets. And Richarlison will do the same. He's a guy that, look, I think I said this probably in the last video, if you gave me a choice between Rafinha and Richarlison, I probably would have personally on a talent level picked Rafinha. But in terms of ticking all the boxes that Tottenham need and Conte needs and this squad needs, it is probably Richarlison because of that ability to play in various roles. And this competitive edge to him, the ability to use the dark arts, as Pochettino called it in the past. I've got this little quote from Conte. I think this just sums up nicely what he wants from his team going forward in the future. A strong team has to become nasty. During the game, you have to feel the blood of your opponent. Sorry, but I don't have any other words to explain it. In my opinion, when you go into a game, one team lives and another dies. You have to be available to do everything, but in a sporting way. You have to know that the game doesn't finish with two happy teams. One team is happy, another is unhappy. You have to try to be the team that finishes happy, celebrates all together, and then has a good atmosphere the rest of the week, and then continues to improve. Don't forget, with wins come wins, wins become wins. This is very important. We're talking about the mentality aspect, about the right mentality, the winning mentality. For sure, this is the aspect we're working on, and we need time and patience. But I'm happy because I know with our players, when I tell them something, what I say goes into their heads, and it doesn't go in one ear and out the other. So there's a little caveat to that, in that was said just after the win at Manchester City, and if you'll remember very clearly, came right after that game at Turf Moor, when Conte afterwards pretty much suggested that he would leave if he was the problem, and hence creating months of speculation. But what I would say is almost this is a reaction to that night as well at Turf Moor. This is showing that he needed more players that were willing to do anything to get the game won. And I think that's what we've seen in these players. He knows that Perisic is that kind of player. Basuma certainly has got that competitive edge. Forster's a goalkeeper. It's obviously slightly different, but he brings that big character into the dressing room. And with Richarlison, look, we know what he's like. We know he is, he is the pantomime villain. I think, like I say, Romero clearly hasn't been too fond of him on the pitch. But what I would say is most players that have that kind of reaction to player opponents, often if they become teammates, end up very much changing that viewpoint. And suddenly all those winning the free kicks and getting the referee to give decisions. But also, we should stress Richarlison has got a lot of talent as well. I feel like I'm really talking out this other side of his game. But as talent alone, he is a very good player. And, he scored 10 goals in the Premier League with 5 assists from 30 Premier League matches in a very much a struggling Everton side. Pretty much Guesty will tell you he was one of the main reasons they stayed up. So imagine putting a player like that into a team that is creating lots of chances and playing well. It's a different thing. But yeah, this other side to it, I know, Romero will no doubt appreciate him being on his team. Rather than the other way around. Defenders don't like playing against him. And when I talk about this kind of slightly nasty competitive edge, when I mean nasty, I mean it in a sporting sense. We saw at Juventus, these top players, the big players in world football, the Sergio Ramoses, the Bonucci's, all the big players out there as well. That's what they had about them. And that's why they lead their team. I said Bonucci because the name of the player, massive Italian defender, star who has just gone to LA, has completely gone out of my head. And yes, I am looking to the side because I don't want to be beaten. And you're all going to be saying it in the comments underneath as I think about it. Giorgio Chiellini. That's the name I was looking for before I said any of those names. And yes, I know I'm cheating by having the laptop here, but I'm finding that maybe it's just because I'm getting older, I'm forgetting the odd name, and it's just nice to have that here. Yes, you will hear the tapping of keys as I look it up. But yeah, this is what those types have got. And I feel like Spurs are building more of these players. You've got Richarlison coming in. You've got Romero. You've got Højbjerg, who's definitely one of those that opposition fans really don't like. Because of the way he is and the moaning at the referee constantly and the going down maybe at the slightest touches at times when it's important areas and he knows they need to win a free kick to relieve the pressure. I'd say Rodrigo Bentancur, he's got that little bit of South American grit to the way he plays as well. And Harry Kane is certainly no stranger to earning free kicks and trying to influence the referee. And I haven't got the quotes here, but I remember Pochettino after the match against Juventus in the Champions League. Was it maybe 2018? Coming out and talking about those dark arts and how his team were too nice and how that was something that needed to change. I mean, you remember Jose Mourinho called them too nice and he said they needed to be intelligent somethings as well. I'm not going to repeat the word he used, but I always remember that day that Pochettino really clearly spoke about not only off the pitch and what I think it was Maratti was doing, the Juve sporting director, he saw him talking, or he claims he saw him talking to some of the officials and just arguing about stuff. and also the players on the pitch. He said his players were too nice, the Spurs players, and not getting decisions. I think Sonny had a bad tackle on him. I can't remember who it was. But yeah. And this is building that kind of big club. And I don't think it's any coincidence that that team was Juventus, and who was one of the main guys at the top at the time? Fabio Paratici. Ooh, the circle is complete. Yeah, and that's what you're seeing. And that is why I think this is a very different Tottenham that's being built. And there's more to come. There is more to come. You know, obviously we know they're looking for a right wing back. I think there'll be 2 centre backs personally, because I think you'll see Joe Rodon likely go on. You'll see perhaps Japhet Tenganga. We'll see what happens with him, what offers come in, and whether Conte decides his versatility is too important. I think they'll look for another kind of creative midfielder, whether that is someone that plays a little bit, can play deeper and centrally, or whether it is someone that plays further up the pitch. We'll see. And I think Richarlison can play up front. He definitely can. And he's you know, Conte looked at Bergwijn as that potential. He kept saying that he was the striker backup to Kane. But for me, yes, I know I used the word backup. But for me, Bergwijn, stature-wise, wasn't the right physical kind of shape, I guess, to be a lone striker if you wanted to play with that formation. But Richarlison is. I think he's over 6 foot. He's got a decent frame on him, and he's done that for Everton. So he can do that. Maybe not so much for the hold-up plays. Maybe more a kind of a... What is it? Tim Vickery was talking about him on Talk Sport yesterday. He said something along the lines of, essentially, he's like a kind of head-down, run-forward kind of guy if he's going to be your striker. But that may be no bad thing as well. But the reason I'm saying that is that, yeah, it's essentially, I understand they will continue to monitor opportunities when it comes to strikers as well, because, like I say, 2 months left of this window, and if there's someone that comes along that you think, oh, do you know what? Yeah, that's a good signing for the future as well of Tottenham, and maybe just for this season as well. So yeah, keep an eye on that. We know, obviously, with the right wing back, we know the main one they're looking at is Djed Spence at Middlesbrough. Some of the strangest media coverage around the transfer I think I've ever seen with poor old Djed Spence. The 21-year-old lad has had his fee agreed more times, I think, than any player in the history of Tottenham transfers. Honestly, it's like we had 3-4 weeks ago that a fee had been agreed. I think Spurs have been in advanced negotiations, apparently, for him more, for about a month now. That's a long time to be advanced. It's a very strange one. From what I understand right now, there still hasn't been progress on that one. We know the facts of this one. We know that Chris Wilder's come out and said he expects the move to happen, that Spence wants to come to Tottenham, but Middlesbrough want to get the right value for him, and clearly Middlesbrough and Spurs valuations are different. Middlesbrough want to get the most for him. Spurs, on the other hand, are probably looking at, maybe as I look at it, is a very talented young man, but ultimately his current level of performance and experience is one albeit very good season in the Championship. And even Wilder said himself in the quotes I saw last weekend, he balked at someone offering him a Championship striker for £20 million. And it's like, well, that's the kind of figures that we're hearing for Djed Spence. So, yeah. Maybe just kind of hold off on that one a little bit. Certainly as a player that we know Spurs want, and Middlesbrough want the money, clearly, that they're going to get for him. And at the moment, it appears that Spence wants Tottenham, but it's a case of actual progress being made and any headway being made on, maybe that's one they've identified that they can sit on a little while. And ultimately, I guess, if Middlesbrough aren't going to shift their opinion and Spurs really, get annoyed, I guess, then maybe they would walk away. But at the moment, perhaps it's one that isn't a desperate need to tie up quickly. But, there's still 9 days until 8 days until they head off to Korea. So that's a lot of time for something to suddenly move, for someone to blink first, I guess, in that. And ideally, of course, it'd be great to get him in before that. But I think I read, was it James Ollie for ESPN, wrote that Forest had given him another week off. I mean, I would have thought being an international anyway, on England under-21 duty, he might have had that extra week anyway. I don't know. I don't know how. Sorry, I said Forest. Middlesbrough do it. But yeah, there's still time. There's still time. So that's Djed Spence. Yeah, I wouldn't get too excited over that one yet. We'll see what happens with that next week, whether there's a breakthrough or not. But yeah, lots of people getting very excited for some reason and their coverage of that one. Because obviously, you know the way I work, I try to get as much information from all sides of any potential deal, whether that's both clubs, whether it's people around players, whatever. And everything on Djed Spence has been very much coming back. No progress yet. So that is at the time of doing this video. The way things are working in this transfer market, I cannot stress that the time this publishes, and for some reason YouTube is processing my videos very slowly at the moment. They're taking like 2, sometimes 3 hours to process. So you'll see it's daytime out here. You'll probably be watching this and it'll be nighttime if you're watching in the UK. So I apologise for that. And it does leave me massively open to just sudden changes in transfers and little things happening and agreements being made while I'm doing it. But hey, I appreciate that that's the way this works. And that is the risk I run by chatting away into a camera. So that's Djed Spence. Look, Paratici, the expression I heard from someone the other day to best describe Paratici was he spins plates. So if you've ever seen, when they do those tricks where they put the plates on sticks and they just kind of go around, they've got all of them going and they're constantly going to each one. And that is the way Paratici works. We've spoken about this at length before, the 10 transfers at a time potentially for each position, negotiating with clubs, whether it's clubs or representatives. And obviously another one of those right now is Clement Lenglet, the Barcelona defender, 27-year-old, experienced France international. He is one of those plates. We shall see what happens with him. It looks like that one is heading somewhere. If Paratici decides to grab that plate and stop it spinning. At the moment, just a little background if you weren't aware. So he is definitely has been, you've heard me say his name numerous times. He's been on the list of Spurs left-sided centre-backs, and he can also play central centre-back in the back three as well. He's been on the list for a while now. Last summer, Spurs tried to sign him on loan from Barcelona, but actually he turned Spurs down. Didn't want to move at that point. Obviously felt that he could succeed at Barcelona, one of the biggest clubs in the world, and why not? Emerson Royal was the same. He didn't really want to leave either. But obviously his season didn't really go the way he wanted. Lenglet, he probably was on the bench more often than not. He started a fair few of their Champions League games, but mostly was on the bench. Just didn't really work out for him. And now, obviously, his stance has changed, as it would. It looks like another loan offer this time, but it looks like Lenglet, obviously, is more willing to move this time. And there's talk of an option to buy. And some of the figures I'm hearing, I'm not going to say them because at the moment they're not confirmed in any way, but they are very cheap, the option to buy it sounds like. So I guess with Lenglet, there's a bit of Lenglet logic there. He's a player that apparently Conte likes the look of. He's not on the top of their list, their wish list. We've said this a million times. Guardiola and Bastoni were the top two, but he was certainly in the kind of the mix underneath them. You've heard me, as I said, you've heard me saying his name for a while now. But with him, look, he's, like I say, can play on the left, he can play centrally, he's got excellent technique, I'm told, cultured or educated, whatever cliche you want to put in there, left foot, good anticipation, lacks a bit of pace perhaps, but he's got plenty of experience in big games as well. So it's one of those where I suppose at some point it becomes a bit of a no-brainer. Like I say, I don't think he'll be the only centre-back that comes in. I think if he comes in, it'll be him and another because of the players that are likely to leave in Roden, potentially Tanganga. I think as a player coming in with experience, again, you heard me say about the ages of those players to begin with, the four that have come in already. This is another one, 27 years old. This isn't a kid. This is someone that's played in the highest level. and would come in with a lot of experience to that back line as well. So if it gets done, from what I understand at the moment, it's not quite close there yet between the two clubs. Sounds like certainly Lenglet is very happy to come, and I don't think personal terms are an issue there at all. Certainly sounds like maybe they've already been agreed with representatives, but I don't think in terms of the two clubs have been told probably not to expect anything this weekend with regards to him. There's some suggestions that he might actually be coming over to London this weekend. Obviously, there's many sides to that. There's potentially he's on holiday, so he may well just be looking at London, especially if it could be a future home for him. He may be scouting it out. It may be that he's there ready to come to Hotspur Way if things suddenly do develop between the clubs. So yeah, that is only talk. That's not confirmed or anything, but there is certainly talk that he could be coming to London this weekend. And then if the clubs do come to an agreement, then that can move quite sharpish, and then maybe early next week we get that one advancing and another player that can come into pre-season training. I was trying to think if he's been on international. I don't think he has been on international duty this time, presumably because he hasn't been playing for Barcelona. So you would think he'd be ready to hit the ground running a little early in pre-season rather than having any more days off. So keep an eye on that one. Like I say, I think on the player side of things, all fine and dandy, and there's an expression I don't think anyone has used for a long time. But in terms of the two clubs, still a little bit of a way to go on that. But that can change at any point. It can. That's the beauty of these things. With the Richarlison stuff, I forgot to even mention that earlier. Richarlison, there was a keenness for Everton to get it done on June the 30th or before the end of June the 30th, because obviously their financial fair play issues and the fact that in terms of getting that on, that the financial fair play season ends on June the 30th. So to be able to get that in their books and for their accounts as having that big old whack of money in, I think it helped them out enormously. And I think all they had to do was have a document showing that they'd agreed a fee. I think that was enough. But in the end, things moved so quickly. I think because Richarlison had agreed terms and everything, and it was all ready to go, or his representatives had, and obviously being able to do the medical in Brazil, it was wrapped up pretty quickly. And then obviously we got the announcement this morning. So that's a perfect example that, with Lenglet, I'm told not to expect anything this weekend with regards to anything like that. But you can't rule it out entirely because this transfer window had shown with Richarlison, things just suddenly went bang. They just moved into overdrive. Keep an eye on that. But like I say, maybe something to look out for very early next week. But if it changes, I shall let you know. So that's Lenglet. Again, I know he's not he's not the one that all the fans want. I've seen this kind of narrative forming on Twitter that he's rubbish. Of course he's not rubbish. He is, like I say, you don't become a France international. You don't get it signed by Barcelona if you're rubbish. That's not really how it works. I know they've made some random signings in the past, but on the whole, you're not going to be. I think, again, in strengthening the squad, I think it's a clever move, especially another loan. You can't turn your nose up at those sort of things when it improves your squad and it improves the definitely the quality on the whole. Good what do you call it? Link. It is. It's him and Davies. It may not even be him and Davies. He may be that this is the beauty, the flexibility he gives that Spurs could then still look at a left. But you never know what happens with the Bastoni situation. That could change as the window goes on. There could, as I was just saying about it, could change quickly in terms of Lenglet. It could also change quickly in terms of Bastoni. If for some reason PSG, Inter Milan suddenly needed money, then suddenly that situation changed and they maybe say to Bastoni, "Oh, lad, I know you want to stay, but maybe you could really help us out by going." That could change, and that way you've got in Lenglet a versatile defender, and Bastoni then can come in and play on the left. Or likewise, Bastoni and Davies could be your left options, and let's say maybe they bring in someone like Bremer. Bremer could play there, or even Pau Torres could play on that left-hand side. He's a guy with his versatility that allows you to have that option in who you go for to replace Roden or possibly Tanganga as well. It's about having quality. That's the key thing. I think we have to get our heads around this now. I think all of us, and myself included, we look at transfers as, why are you not buying him if he's not going to start? It's got to be the best. We want the best. And it doesn't, sometimes the best is actually getting players that create a strong squad. And I think that's what Spurs are trying to do. So, yeah, who else? What else we got? We have Anthony Gordon as well. I upset some Everton fans in the week. And I totally understand why they got upset. Because Spurs fans and myself as a fan would be very upset if I was saying that a player would be keen on a move. I should stress what I was saying. I did a report this week. Spurs have, they've looked at Anthony Gordon as a potential homegrown signing. When they were doing the Richarlison talks, there was an interest in Gordon as well. He's class. I really like Anthony Gordon. I think he could be a very exciting player. England international, I think, as well. He's only 21. A real breakthrough season, again, in a struggling Everton team. From what I understand, while he is definitely, 100% a hometown boy, would never ask to leave Everton, from what I understand, he would be keen to play for Conte in the Champions League at Tottenham if the opportunity were to arise and Everton were to agree with that. Like I say, I think that's probably just common sense, though. It's like, I'm not saying that he's banging down the door saying, I want to leave. I think I'm just saying, as a young player, that if you had the opportunity to play for, I know it's not your hometown team, but if you have the opportunity to play for a team that's in the Champions League, who is currently on a higher level with better players in your squad currently, I think it's common sense. But yeah, Everton fans took that quite badly, and I understand that. And Spurs fans, I think, would be the same if anyone wrote that about, let's say, Oliver Skip or whatever. So I get that. But that's, I can only report what I'm told. Look, I don't think Everton probably would let him go anyway, because I think there would be riots outside the stadium, outside Goodison Park about it. And like I say, I don't think he's beating down the door to leave either. So yeah, but a very talented young player that Spurs will be keeping an eye on. Maybe one for future windows if there's no way that door opens at all this time. Who else I've seen? Saw Jesse Lingard linked again today. You might remember I said many, many months ago, back in January, that Spurs had talks with his representatives about the potential of a summer move. I don't know how much of a goer that is personally, and I'd say that probably more from the player's point of view. I think as a squad player for Tottenham, I think he would be a good addition, but I think from his point of view, I'd struggle to see the logic in having spent a season pretty much on the bench at Manchester United to come to Tottenham where he's not going to be starting week in, week out. He's just not. We spoke about the rotation angle, but I don't see Lingard starting regularly in that role, in that respect. So, yeah, I'd be surprised at that one. Interestingly, Everton, I've seen, been linked with him as well. I think from what I remember, back in January, it was about... it was more about... They got the impression that he was potentially heading abroad. But I don't know whether maybe there's not the same options that were available then. I would have thought West Ham would make the most sense for me. But yeah, maybe one to just keep an eye on, but I don't know whether it makes as much sense now as it did then, other than the fact that he would be free. But there you go. The other one, again, I saw linked, just literally rumours on social media, was Yuri Tielemans. Club really distancing themselves. Anyone that I've spoken to in the club has just said no truth in that one. So, again, he's a player that Spurs have looked at in the past, definitely. I know they have. But maybe in terms of this summer, at this moment in time, not a potential target they're looking at. Whether that changes as the window goes on, whether, I don't know. But at this moment in time, all the noises coming out of Spurs are very much nothing in that one. So, yeah, the other element that we have to speak about, and I know some can get a little bit bored by it, but it is quite important, I sound like a bit of a teacher there, is the homegrown foreign player limits thing. Because Richarlison's arrival has only kind of exacerbated some of the issues that Spurs do have in that. And that's why I really think we're in a period now where, look, I know we all want the next signing. I know that literally the moment Richarlison was announced, people were asking about more transfers, and that's just the way it is. And I do think, more will happen in the next week or so. But I do think players really need to start getting out the door. Spurs really need to kind of put some focus into that, because these homegrown player, mainly the foreign player issues, but there's some homegrown ones there as well. And actually, in a surprisingly opposite way to I thought with homegrown when I first thought about it. So, a couple of the kind of just the bullet points of things that we now need to know in how things have changed. So, Kulusevski, no longer considered an under-21 player. So that makes a difference, certainly, straight off. He's not... you can't put him on that under-21 list in the Premier League anymore. So you can't do that. And also Ryan Sessegnon and Oliver Skipp both come off that list as well. So that makes it about 3 players that you could kind of hide away on that under-21 list that now have to be registered as senior players. That makes a difference to your numbers straight off the bat. Pape Matar and Brian Hill will still be included as under-21 players in the Premier League. They can be. So that's fine. But yeah, the fact that you have to be born after January 1st, 2001, I think, is the cut-off date. And if you're not, then you cannot be on that under-21 list. So if you're not aware, the squad list is 25 players. It is 17 foreign or non-locally trained, whatever you want to call it. 17 of those, and then 8 homegrown. You can obviously have more homegrown. If you have more homegrown players over 21, you then have to bring down your foreign player limit as well, which is where some of these problems arise. So, in terms of the Premier League, at the moment, Spurs are bang on the 17, on the limit. So that is very quickly Lloris, Emerson, Dyer, Romero, Sanchez, Reguilon, Højbjerg, Bentancur, Bissouma, Lo Celso, Ndombele, Perisic, Kulusevski, Bergwijn, Lucas, Son and Richarlison. So obviously, you've heard some of the names in there. Some of those names we know are very unlikely to be at club by the end of the window. So you'd expect Lo Celso and Tongi to be heading off. Bergwijn there as well, obviously wants to go to Ajax. Others in there, Emerson and Reguilon potentials. They don't want to go, but I think Spurs would like to move them on. Otherwise, they're going to end up with 3 fullbacks on either side, which makes no real sense to anyone. So in terms of the homegrown players for the Premier League squad, there's actually 11 of those right now. So you've got Fraser Forster, Brandon Austin, Matt Doherty, Joe Rodon, Ben Davies, Japhet Tanganga, Ryan Sessegnon, Oliver Skipp, Harry Winks, Jack Clarke and Harry Kane. Again, players in there we know are likely to head off. Joe Rodon to get regular football, hopefully on loan rather than permanently, because I do think there's much more to come from him. Winks likely to head off. Jack Clarke probably going to head off as well. So that brings you down to your 8 if those 3 go alone. And then you've got the under-21s list, which you've got the likes of, like I say, Pape Matar, Brian Hill, Dane Scarlett, Troy Parrott, Harvey White, people like that. I think Harvey White just sneaks in it. I think he's under 21 anyway. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, so that squad, everything's a little bit tight, but essentially with the players that are going, that one should be fine. The main issues we have are definitely in the Champions League squad. So the Champions League squad, if you might remember, the big issue with this is that UEFA doesn't recognise players that trained outside the country, so that's England, as homegrown, which means in the Champions League squad, Matt Doherty, Joe Rodon, Ben Davies are all considered non-homegrown or non-locally trained. And what I should also stress, in both squads, Eric Dyer isn't, because his formative years were spent in Portugal, of course. So he's actually for neither. So you've got this weird thing of being an England international he has been, yet he is not considered homegrown, which is really weird. So the Champions League list, that means with all of those additionals, they're 22 players, which is 5 over the limit of 17 they can have in that. That changes everything. It really does. That's far, far too many. You're going to have to lose players from that. And obviously, think about that. a lot of those players that you've seen linked, they're foreign players as well. So let's say Lenglet does come in next week. That's 23. That's 6 over the foreign player limit. You can't afford to have those players sitting there not being able to play Champions League football. We've seen it in the past with poor old Juan Foyth, I remember, and he couldn't play. Joe Rodon as well couldn't play in Europa League under Mourinho. In Kudu, I think in the past, I've got a feeling other players have been left out as well for portions. Maybe Lamela because he was injured and things like that. But you can't have players, especially on decent wages, sitting there not being able to play. And even the homegrown players in the Champions League list, there's 8 exactly there right now. I mean, yeah, you could, if Winks and Clark go, then that obviously changes things a little bit, and then you can add a couple in there. But that is why you're going to see them looking at these homegrown players like Anthony Gordon, Djed Spence as well, because foreign player-wise, there's only so many they can do without getting people out the door. And they are very much at that limit there. So hopefully that's explained a little bit of the homegrown foreign player thing, because I always get people asking about that. So yeah, main kind of bullet points on that. Kulusevski, Sessegnon and Skip all now can't be in the under-21 list, which makes a big difference. And also, the loan players coming back has made a big difference as well. So yeah, 22 foreign players on a limit of 17 in the Champions League. That has to change. They'll have to make some decisions, which is why, when I say about these likes of Emerson and Reguilon, like I say, Reguilon's come back early as well to work hard, but at the end of the day, they can't afford to have 3 players in each position because of these limits. Conte wants 2 in each. That's exactly what he's after. So yeah, let's see how they deal with that. But yeah, keep an eye on that, because you always see these people going, now I want them to sign this, that. But ultimately, they've got to adhere to those squad limits. So much is changing at the club. It really is. And Conte is right at the centre of it. Another thing, off the pitch, Gianni Vio. If you're not aware of him, he is a specialist set pieces coach. Spurs, I understand, are in advanced talks to bring him in. Not done yet, but certainly they are looking to bring him in. He has got one hell of a reputation for his set pieces. He, I've got the number here somewhere. How many? He has designed 4,830 different set piece routines. He's worked with the Italian national team, AC Milan, Leeds United, Brentford, Fiorentina, Palermo. Euro 2020. Essentially, Italy, obviously, they won. There was massive credit went his way, Vio's, because of how dangerous their set pieces were. And what he does is he goes in and he moulds them around certain players. He's got, like I say, almost 5,000 different set pieces, but he moulds them around the individuals that he finds at each club he goes to, and who kind of suits what best. And I had a little bit of background and looked up. There's some good little articles on him as well. He spent more than 20 years studying numerous variations in free kick routines, and he launched a website which resulted in a book, because he was a banker as well. This is the interesting thing. His background is banking. And he kind of co-wrote a book called That Extra 30%. That caught the eye of Walter Zenga, used to be the Italy goalkeeper. And then he hired him when he joined Catania in 2008. And listen to this, right? He made an instant impact video, because I've got the numbers here. They called him the Little Wizard, because 17 out of the team's 44 goals were scored from set plays, and they escaped relegation. And just from then on, it's like bang. He's just. He did an interview with La Nuova di Venezia newspaper. Venezia. This was The Guardian had translated this. And this is his idea when it comes to set pieces. You need to analyse the players you have and find solutions tailor-made to their skill set. There are players whose reading of the game is special. At the highest level, Sergio Ramos comes to mind. Wherever you put the ball, you can bet he'll find a way to get on the end of it. Timing is the most important thing when it comes to the finishing of a set piece. Spurs have had troubles with their set pieces. There is no getting away from it. They really have. They have struggled. We know that, especially from direct set pieces as well. Funnily enough, we saw Sonny scoring a couple of lovely free kicks at the start of the international break, and you kind of thought, oh, maybe that's the solution. And look, this guy could come in and sort it all out as well. So yeah, not quite done yet, but that could be a big addition. Spurs, I can't even remember them having a specialist set piece coach. That would be another way of backing Conte as well. Another one. A couple of more new arrivals in terms of players. I forgot to mention Josh Keeley. Remember I said the 19-year-old goalkeeper of St Patrick's. He is now been officially announced because it's July the 1st. He's able to do that. So he got his unveiling today along with Tyrell Ashcroft. He turns 18 this month. Defender formerly at Reading. So both of those guys will go into the development squad and hopefully big things to come from them. Today was also first day of some of the new guys in the recruitment team. So Greta Steinson, July the 1st was the day he was due to start. And also Simon Davies, the head of methodology. Greta Steinson, if you're not aware, he's going to be the performance director, working essentially as the right-hand man to Paratici. And then Andy Scolding, who comes from Rangers, he will be coming later in the summer to be the assistant performance director. And yeah, Simon Davies, not that Simon Davies, the former Spurs one. He will be essentially that link between the first team and the academy manager, Dean Rastrick, and they will sort things out. Essentially, from what I understand, I think I might have said this before, Paratici's skill set is seen as working that market, working the transfer market, his contacts, ridiculous amount of contact, but also his way of manoeuvring in the boardroom. You know, he's very good at getting what he wants, and I think we're seeing that in this summer as well. And what he does with the rest of things, the football side of things, the setup, is he goes in and he does appraisals of everything, which he did with Steve Hitchen before his resignation. They kind of worked out what everything was needed in different departments, and then he surrounds himself with experts, and that's what he's done with Greta Steinson, who, yes, he was at Everton, and obviously people are kind of looking at that and going, oh, Everton, but I think there was a bit of a power struggle there. I don't think things were easy at Everton from what I can tell. So Greta Steinson comes in, Andy Scolding, and then at the youth level, kind of the link, synergy, as they call it, will be Simon Davies with Dean Rastrick. And yeah, I think Chris Powell as well, because obviously Ryan Mason's moved up to be part of the first team coaching staff last season. So that structure now is very much defined and clear. It's a lot of people doing those jobs. It'd be interesting to see how it works. But, you know, if they can all work in unison and get in there and start working quickly together, it can only benefit Spurs probably in future transfer windows, you'd imagine, rather than this one. But yeah, still 2 months left. Who knows what recommendations they can come up with. So what else we got? Dane Scarlett and Alfie Devine will have just kicked off while I'm filming this, actually, in the European Under-19 Championship final against Israel. Fingers crossed. They star in that as well and come back with ultra confidence, probably both heading out on loan. It's been a busy one. It's been a busy time. There's been a lot happening. Keeping up on Richarlison as well and exactly what was happening there and how things were going to go. What I'll do is I'll answer a couple of little questions from, I did say put your questions into underneath my last video, and I'll try and answer a few of those. Probably don't want to go on too long because I've kept you almost the hour already. But like I say, always keep putting your questions underneath in the comments, and I'll always try and do a little section, especially during the transfer window, a little section of questions at the end, and then occasionally maybe try and do a full Q&A video if time allows. So what we got here, we've got Michael Roster asked, do you happen to know we can watch the pre-season tour on TV? I think it's on that Spurs Play, isn't it? The new thing that's launching in a couple of days' time. I will hopefully, COVID allowing, be out there in Korea. So obviously I'll be delivering all the latest on that as well. What else we got? Michael Suffolk asks, which previous player would fit the Conte system the most? You can't say Ericsson. He suggested Vertonghen, Walker, Lamella. Really interesting. I went to Wimbledon on Tuesday. Jonathan Veal, Press Association reporter you may well know from covering Tottenham. He got me in there as his media guest. Lovely day. I like my tennis. It's very cool. But aside from that, when I was queuing up at the bar, Carl Walker was in the queue as well, quite interestingly. I don't know why he was among us, the riffraff, when he could have been in the posh boxes and all that, but he was there with Michael Brown, I saw as well, actually, former Tottenham player. But that's an aside. That's an absolute aside. I think Jan Vertonghen in his prime would have fit the back three perfectly, like a glove. And I think Lamella, yeah. I would say Eriksen. I do think Eriksen. I don't understand why Spurs called their interest in Eriksen. There must be something more to it, because I do think he ticks a lot of the boxes for what Conte wants to do. Also, can you put to bed the Tongi redemption arc narrative? Yeah, I think a lot of that has come from the video he did of his pre-season work or off-season work that he's been doing, which all players are doing, of course. I think it'd be very tough for him. And you know I'm the biggest Tongi fan. I think it'd be very tough for him to get back into Conte's thinking now. What else we got? Mark Oxley says, question for your Q&A with regards to Sergio Reguilon. I thought Madrid had 2 summers for him to use their buyback clause, but this is never mentioned. Is that the case, or was it only 1 summer and now we have to pay this summer his fee? Yeah, it was 2 summers. This summer as well, they could if they wanted to, but bearing in mind, I think the fee was about 15 million on top of what they paid for him, which was about 28. So, you're looking at a fair old whack there for Reguilon, and I don't think Real are probably likely to pay that. There seems to be the thinking that Spurs have to pay for him this summer, which is perhaps why they're also looking to offload him as well. What else we got? Break and Run says, Windows started positively but has died. Come on, Levy. Obviously, that was before the Richarlison. There's the thing, I think we've all got so impatient, and I think it is. I think we're just so used to almost having a signing a week at the moment that it's we're already looking to the next one. What else we got? More questions, lots of comments. I don't know. It's a financial one. I don't know. I'll be honest. Diamond Mouth asks, you talk about instalments. That was me talking last week, when people maybe look at transfer fees without understanding that a lot of transfers are paid instalments. So I think that was to do with people looking at, they withdrew the first 100 million, didn't they, from the 150 million to be able to use as capital. And people were saying that's not enough. But actually, because of first instalments and the way things work, it doesn't really work like that. So Diamond Mounted asks, is there high interest on his instalments? Does the seller club want longer periods of repayment? Do you know what? It's a very good question that I don't know the answer to. I don't know. I'll look into that one. I will. Michael L. Bird asks, has the Premier League released a TV schedule for the first 2 months? Wondering if any match times have been changed. I think only the opening weekend at the moment. We know that Spurs will have their first 3 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday since the Burnley game in, was it 2019? A long, long time ago. But other than that, I don't think they've got past that first weekend yet. I don't think so. What else we got? S.M. asks, why not Christensen released from Chelsea? Yeah, I think he was always heading off. Has he gone to Barcelona? Has he gone to Barcelona? I think he has. See, this is the thing. When you're so Spurs focused, you sometimes actually miss out what's happening with other clubs and fully concentrating on it. And they also ask what's happened to Sarr, the whiz kid we signed last summer, which everyone knows why I'm slightly grinning at that, because I always seem to get asked about Sarr, despite the fact that I talk about him in pretty much every video. Very quick synopsis. I'd expect him to go out on loan, but whether it's this summer or whether it's in January, we'll see. I think Conte wants to have a good look at him, but I do wonder with those foreign player numbers in the European competition, because also I should have said, when you're an under-21 player on there, call it a B list, you have to have been at the club. I think it's for, I can't remember if it's 2 full seasons or 3 full seasons. I think it might be 2 full seasons. But obviously he won't be able to do that. So I don't know whether it benefits him to be sticking around but not being able to play in Europe at all. So it may be that he gets a loan. Karen Patel asked about Anthony Gordon. I answered that earlier. What other questions? Sam K.A. asked, do you think it would be a positive or negative move for Spurs if ENIC sold up? Depends who comes in. I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, it's always, the grass is always green on the other side thing, there's been a lot of ropey owners that have come into clubs. Do I think ENIC have made mistakes? Definitely. There's been some strange decisions in some of the transfer windows, especially. Have they pushed on enough? No. I mean, one trophy in the entire tenure is not good enough. It's difficult to criticise too much right now because it does seem that they are listening to Conte and Paratici and they are moving in a positive momentum. Like I say, it's who you get at the end of it. And if you are going to get someone who's going to pump billions into your club, then of course it's better. If it's someone that's going to come in and be worse, that's the thing. I don't think Tottenham Hotspur as a football club has deteriorated. If anything, I think as a club itself, it's definitely a bigger and better club than it was. Of course it is. You only have to look at the infrastructure and stuff like that and the league finishes and things like that. But, yeah, I don't know. You can't really predict the future, and that's a difficult thing. It remains to be seen whether the new Chelsea owners are going to be an improvement on Abramovich, who obviously pumped a lot of money in there. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of clubs that wanted change, and when they got it, weren't too happy with what they got. So, I don't know. It's an unknown quantity, really. Interestingly, Mark Smith asks, "What's the thoughts on how Sergio Aurier would have performed in a right wing back role under Conte?" That's interesting because I think Villarreal just today have said that they're not taking up the option on Aurier, so I think he'll be a free agent again as well. He might have been good. It's a difficult one. I don't think for Spurs would ever look back at Sergio Aurier. I don't think so. What else we got here? I'll do another couple before heading off. I think that's a joke. That's another Pape Sarr one. Updates on Reguilon's future, says Felipe Sergio. We've kind of covered that already. That's an interesting one. Scott Landry, for the Q&A, realistically, who wins the league first, Tottenham, Arsenal or United? I know how Conte would answer this. Conte would say, realistically, it should be United because of the amount of money that they will pump into their club every year. Although I don't think they've bought anyone yet, have they? I'd say realistically, yes, in terms of the finances put in and the squad and all of that, it should be United. But hey, let's see what happens with Tottenham. It's quite funny. We were talking about it in the last video as well, weren't we, about fans getting panicky because of all the signings Arsenal have made. And actually, a lot of those signings still hasn't happened. Gabriel Jesus is going to go there, and I do think he'll be a good signing for what they need. But Rafinha doesn't look at this moment to be Arsenal bound, so that's one that maybe a lot of fans have just decided was going to happen. We don't know. They're still an unknown quantity at the moment. Tottenham are looking more known because they're getting these faces in through the door. I'd say you'd probably put Tottenham ahead of Arsenal purely because of Conte has that experience of winning the Premier League as well, and obviously they are being proactive in what they're doing. So it's a difficult one. I'd say in terms of finances, United should. But maybe out of that three, in terms of how they're going about things this summer, maybe you'd say Tottenham. But I think you have to massively add the caveat, City and Liverpool are consistently strengthening. Salah just signed his new deal as well today. I don't think anyone should have realistic ambitions that you're going to knock them off their perch. But certainly I think Tottenham can maybe give them a bit of a run for their money the way they're going if they continue in this progressive trend of this summer so far. It's technically not even properly into the summer yet either. What else we got? Argendo asked, for the Q&A, I was wondering how you approach these people around players you might never have heard of, or probably have never heard of you either. Harsh, but probably fair. Do you just cold call them, or do you work together with fellow journalists to build up that network? I don't really work with other journalists. It's not really like that. Once in a while you might share contacts, but it's not as usual because obviously we're all trying to, I guess, get those stories out there. It's just building up a base of contacts. That's essentially what it is, because the more people you know, in the game, the more people they know and they can put you in touch with. I'm quite fortunate, I guess, that now, for some unknown reason, my name is a bit more out there. That does sometimes mean people will come to me, and then, or if I do contact people, it makes it a little bit easier to speak to them because they might have heard of me, possibly. And if not, they can probably just have a little look up and see that, my reputation, thankfully, is of someone that tries to get things right as much as I can, as accurate as you can be in the world of football when things are constantly changing in every single moment. And, my mantra, I've always said it, try to always get two sources for everything and be right rather than being first. That's the most important thing. And if you're first as well, fantastic. But ultimately, it's about being right. And I think, thankfully, it seems to be that is a reputation that's getting out there, which is lovely. And it does help me, I guess, when I'm talking to people. Because even if maybe the first time I talk to them, they're a bit like, they might go away and talk to other people. And then, and also, what's the most important thing as well is when you get sources, is not to burn them. It's not to hang them out to dry. It's never to tell people who you're talking to either. So I think that's a key thing as well. It's building up trust. I do know some journalists that have dropped their sources in it and things like that. So I think that's a key thing as well, is building up, that if something is said off the record, it stays off the record and things like that. It's a strange kind of waters to kind of navigate your way through, and that's what it is. But there you go. So I think we'll probably leave it there because I've been speaking for a little while and finish off there on a little job related note. But yeah, keep an eye on what's happening with a few of those ones. I think certainly with Lenglet, Spurs just really have to pull the trigger and come to that compromise with Barcelona exactly what the structure will be of things if they want to push that through. Spence, again, it's about the valuation and the difference in them, and if they can come to a decision that they are going to go for it, and when that happens, and whether it's a who blinks first kind of thing. And I think we'll get more names come out of the woodwork. I've said various names for each position and various ones that the club are looking at. I think there's more to come. I think this transfer window is going to bring us a surprise or two still to come of names that I will always say this, and this is always the way. This is why you can't really predict exactly how a transfer window is going to go. You can give a rough idea, but ultimately opportunities suddenly arise that you didn't expect to come, and these doors open. And Tottenham are very much an opportunity club. They will move quickly. Sometimes it will be in a position they don't even really need someone in, but it's just too good an opportunity to turn down, and they go for them because they know, terms of strengthening and in terms of the future, it's a big thing to do. So I think we'll see at least one of those, maybe two, happen by the time the transfer window closes. Like I say, 2 full months. I'm going to be knackered. Thankfully, I also have the pre-season and actual football to write about, not just transfers. People have asked me that, what do I prefer? Which kind of element of my job. I prefer covering matches, of course I do. I'm in this to write about football, and I love covering the actual matches themselves and the minutiae and the details. And that's why I find Conte so fascinating when he talks about the game, just to kind of glean these little bits of information from someone so experienced. So that side I love. Transfers is alright. It's okay. It's just, like I say, it's such a difficult thing to navigate. Anything can be right in one moment and it can be completely seemingly wrong the next, because something that looked nailed on suddenly isn't going to happen, or something that wasn't going to happen, suddenly things have accelerated and they are. So it's a very difficult field to report on. But hey, part of the fun of it all. So right, I'm going to head off now. Probably do another video early next week when hopefully we'll have had a few more developments with a few different scenarios. And like I say, I think Spurs need to start getting players out that door as well, because you don't really want players, sticking around for too long in pre-season when they're not really buying into the philosophy or want to be a part of the group. And especially not going on that career tour. I do wonder whether they do what they did with players a few seasons back when they just said, look, you stay back and you sort yourselves out moves because there's no real point in you coming on that tour. I get the impression that's probably what's going to happen. I wouldn't imagine they'll take every single player out there because it does nobody any favours. So there you go. Right, I'm going to head off now. And we'll be catching up on what's happening in that under-19s final as well. So, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.